So how do we save higher score using shared preferences? Okay, what we're going to do here is we are going to actually create another class. Let's go back to our project here. Get rid of this. At this point, let's just go to main activity. What we're going to do, we are going to separate our code again. This time, we're going to create another class inside of another package here. So let's go ahead and create a util package. Okay, util stands for utility. So that's where you put all of the classes that are more on the utility side than anything else. Okay, so I'm going to say package here, call this util like that. Very good. And you can see because of Android Studio again, it helps us out and it gives us the proper image for our util folder. As you can see, there is this little tool there. Very good. So I'm going to right click here, create a new Java class, call this Prefs for preferences like that. Very good. So what I'm going to do here, the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we have a shared preferences reference. So I'm going to say private, going to be shared preferences, call this preferences as such. Very good. And next thing we're going to do, we're going to create a constructor. So in this constructor here, I'm going to pass this preferences as you saw there. So this preferences is going to be preferences. So we are instantiating or we are constructing our class here. Very good. So once we do that, then I'm going to just create a few methods here that will allow us, number one, to save the highest score, and number two, to get the higher score. Okay. So I'm going to say public void save highest score. I'm going to pass int score like that. So in this case here, what we need to do is to save our preferences. But notice that at this point, we don't have the actual preferences set up, so we can start adding things to the preferences XML, right? So at this point, we said these preferences is equal to just preferences. Well, this is not quite right. In fact, we're going to get rid of this. We are going to pass an activity. Remember, the reason why we're passing activity here is because when we want to use shared preferences or any class for that matter that connects to an activity, we need to make sure that we are able to pass along that context, right? So like we said here, this prefs is a different entity, a different class. So for us to be able to get the preferences, it needs to be attached to an activity. That's the reason why when we actually instantiate this prefs class, we need to pass a context. In this case, it's going to be activity. I'm going to say activity as that. So it's going to be an activity type. It could be context, doesn't matter. But in this case, I'm just going to put activity. That same thing. All right. So once we have this activity here, so this preference now, we're going to point it to what? That's where we're going to use our activity context that we're passing. Okay. And I'm going to say dot get preferences, and I'm going to pass here the mode. So I'm going to say again, our activity, say dot private mode like that. So we've done this before, except we didn't do inside of a separate class. So this is how you would do. So in our prefs constructor, we actually instantiating, make sure that this get preferences is set up before we use it anywhere else. So let's think through here what needs to happen. Well, to save the highest score, we need to compare because we need to know whether this current score that we're getting before we save anything, it is indeed the highest score from the previous score. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the current score. I'm going to say int current score like that is going to be equal to what? Well, it's going to be equal to the score that we're going to be passing right now. So I'm going to say equal to score like that. Okay. So now we have a reference. And then what we're going to do here, we are going to go ahead and use our preferences, again, the instantiated shared preferences here, and get the score that was previously saved. Right? Because we're assuming here there's been a score that was previously saved. If there hasn't been any, then we're going to make this current score here going to be the highest because there hasn't been any score registered. So to do that, we're going to just assume that everything is working properly. We're going to just say preferences dot get int. So the int is going to be what? So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass the key. The key is going to be high underscore score as that. And if there's nothing coming in, I'm going to just say default 0. Okay, what's happening here? Well, we are looking into the future, right? Assuming that we have something inside of high score. If there's nothing there, which would mean that this is the first time the user is actually playing this trivia app, we're just going to go ahead and return 0. Okay, as default. That's totally fine. So we're saying get whatever it's saved inside of preferences. If there is anything saved there, we're going to get that. And in this case here, I'm going to put inside of another int called last score, like that. Current score, which we are passing whenever we want to save, right? And I'm going to get the last score that was saved, which we assume is going to be something there. If there's nothing, it's going to just return 0. That's totally fine. So this should not fail per se. Now we're going to just say if, right? If current score is greater than last score, right? Then we know that we have a new highest, which we're going to go ahead and say preferences.put. But we can't do that because we have to get the edit first, right? Remember? So that means now I can preferences.edit. So get the editor like that, dot put. What I'm going to put? I'm going to put an integer like that. The string key has to be the same as this high score, right? Because we want to make sure that everything is consistent so that when we want to retrieve, we actually retrieve the correct key. And the value is going to be what? The current score. Does that make sense? Because if current score, let's say, is 100, and we come in and look at high score, it just comes in as 0. Well, 100 current score is greater than 0. That just means then we have to put a new high score, because that's what we have right now. Now, of course, we're having issues here because we have to actually commit or apply. All right. It's easy to forget. I'm going to say dot apply. So now we have saved everything inside. Okay. So we have a new high score. Let's say here, and we save it. Very good. So at this point here, this should be fine. And I'm going to create another method here. I'm going to say public void get high score. This case is going to be an integer. So I'm going to say int. So it's going to return what? Well, preferences again, dot get int high underscore score. And it's going to be 0 if there's nothing in there. Okay, default value. Just to be consistent here, we said highest score. Let's just get rid of this and say high score. I think that's probably better. Very good. Okay, so there we go. All right, let's go ahead and see how can we actually get this to work. Back to our main here, and we're going to test things out real quick here. So I'm going to create an instance, or instance variable, I should say here. Say private prefs. There it is. I'm going to call prefs like that. Okay, so inside of main, of course, this is where we do everything. I'm going to say prefs is equal to new prefs, and remember we have to pass our main activity like this, or get context, whatever works for you. Okay, there we go, because that's the contract. All right, so now we are able to use our prefs. Let's go ahead and do something real quick here. So whenever we click the next button here, I'm going to invoke prefs dot save high score, and I'm going to pass here score counter for now. Okay, so you can see what's going on. And then once that happens, I'm going to say, for instance, log d. I'm going to say prefs dot get high score like that. See how that will work. Prefs. Okay, let's see if that's going to do anything at all. Okay, let's save this, give it a quick run. Okay, there we go. Let's get our log here. This is going to be prefs. Let's see. So I'm going to say, doesn't matter. I'm going to say next. All right, on click 100. So prefs was added and is actually showing that the current score is 100. Very good. So we were able to save and get that score. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to copy this and comment this out so I can show you that we should get, whenever we want to say, give me the highest score so far, we should get hopefully that 100. Let's go back to main here. So whenever we come back, I'm not going to save. I'm just going to say something like that. Okay, prefs that get high score. Let's see. I'm going to say this second so you know that exactly we're getting from. So I'm going to get rid of this application. Clear all. Let's run again. So this is a fresh run, and this I'm going to change this to second. There we go. Second, right away, we ran on click, it shows 100. You see that? Very good. So that means, because remember, we're on create here, that's the first thing that is run. Notice I didn't click anything, and we're able to see the second on click 100. So our logic inside of our prefs here, it is indeed working. So we are able to save scores and get the highest. Now, if I come down here and say, for instance, let's go back to the next here. I'm going to uncomment this. So to show that this is indeed working, let's uncomment that. I'm going to comment this out too. And in this time, I'm going to save this and give it a run. So we're going to go further. Still says second on click 100 because that was the latest highest score. So I'm going to go again, say true. And this is false. So I should be at a 200 points now. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. That's also false. I'm going to keep going. That's false. Very good. So I'm at 400. Okay, good. So this is still the same, our debug here. This is last time. I'm going to get rid of the app again. Clear. Let's go ahead and run. Look at that. On click 300. Now, the reason why it's showing only 300, this is very interesting because we are calling it on the next button. So by the time when we click the next where we actually end up at 400 and we got rid of it, it didn't register that. So this was just a little test so I can show you that this is actually working, but this is a little bit deceiving because that is not the correct place to actually call it, if that makes any sense, okay? Very good, but at least you see that now this is working, is tracking our numbers, is making sure to go and get the highest score and save it there. Very good, so this is good progress. In the next video, we're going to continue and actually put it all together so we can actually see this working properly. All right, I'll see you next.